World Events had worked a deal with Matchbox to have Japanese toy maker Bandai remake their beautiful, intricately detailed Golion toy from 1981 and export it to the United States.
Not only is it a work of art in and of itself, and a near-perfect imagining of the robot, it is a beautiful homage to the 1984 Matchbox Voltron, the first Voltron toy to hit American shores.
But Panache Place is often derided by Voltron collectors and toy collectors alike for inferior designs and goofy-looking action figures. The critics aren't completely wrong. Do not buy this. Do not be suckered by its size. Do not be sucked in by the hype. It's crap.
In terms of the artwork, it's just, I mean, you can't compare from all of the Golion Voltron boxes that we've seen, because I've kind of seen them all now. It looks very high-end, but it has that this bulk and the ability, and of course it has all of the cool weapons as well.
If I were, in someone's position and didn't own a die-cast Voltron, this would be the one to get. I think it's for hardcore Lego collectors who happen to like Voltron from their past, and Voltron-only collectors. If you are just a toy collector and you like Voltron and want a Voltron in your collection, you need to go with more of a purpose-built, engineered Voltron toy. It's pretty good for a mass-produced retail Voltron. It's not a disaster. It's not like the Matty Collector debacle from a few years ago. But the question is this the definitive Voltron? Is this the last word in Beast King Golion? And that's a really difficult question to answer. When it comes to Voltron, the road has been a long one. And as you can see from the title of this video, this isn't going to be just standard toy review thoughts. Voltron has been with me as long as Star Wars in terms of emotional memory. Over the years this channel has been going, we do review classic-looking combining Voltrons, but we have not reviewed every Voltron that has been made. For example, we did not review the legendary Defender toy. We don't review the ones that are kind of stylized third-party versions. We didn't review the very chunky Voltron on steroids last entry from Toynami. My Voltron, Golion, Die Rugger tastes are in a very specific lane. And going all the way back to when I was a kid, Voltron was a constant compromise. The original die-cast Lions were too expensive, and then there was the lead scare. And so then I had to end up with the Panache version with the figures, which is the one where I had the full robot. With the die-cast one, I only had the Black Lion. But with the Panache place, I had the full robot with the action figures and all that kind of stuff. We get into the 2000s, the late 90s, early 2000s, and suddenly 80s nostalgia is at an all-time high, and Toynami comes out with their Masterpiece Edition, and, I want to pick that up because I never had the die-cast one, but I ended up getting one of those right before I got the Toynami one. I got the die-cast one on an eBay sale, and finally had a Matchbox, made in Japan, GB36 Voltron. I ended up with an original Popey as well, but all of these versions end up trading one thing for another. And that's why I've been so selective over the years with the Voltrons that I've purchased, the ones I actually choose to put my money down on. Because unlike almost any other American toy brand, and I do emphasize American toy brand, Voltron has always been expensive. Yes, it's based off of a Japanese Super Sentai robot, a chogokin. Those toys over in Japan have always been expensive, and they're always 3 to 4 times as expensive imported to the United States. So Voltron comes from a DNA legacy of these toys being expensive. There are some people who devote themselves to chogokin robots, much like some people devote themselves to Lego. But when your pop culture tastes are a little more varied, you like a little G.I. Joe, you like your Star Wars, you like your Silverhawks and your Mask, you have to narrow it down. With the Bandai Soul of Chogokin, I thought, okay, even though it's barely 11 inches tall, it is the quality that Bandai has always put into Soul of Chogokin. It was a stellar piece, and I thought this might be it. At the time, I said, I don't think this is definitive. And then Blitzway announced their Carbotix Voltron. I had already passed over the last one from Toynami, which was kind of a beefy on steroids Voltron. And then I passed over this third-party one called Golion something or another. I can't remember what it was called. And now there's this one called Titan something, which I don't even think comes apart, so that one doesn't even count for me. But that one was announced around the same time as this one. And I thought, well, it can't be so enticing as to make me want to get it. I've got the Soul of Chogokin. I've got probably the best one that's been made in the modern era. And then they started listing out the features. And I said, oh, okay, so this one's really tall, and it's going to be a mix of die-cast and plastic, as is tradition. And it's going to have a display stand, and it's going to have all the weapons, just like the Soul of Chogokin did. And it's going to have extra articulation in the lions, and it's going to have light-up features, and it's going to really push the envelope of what Golion should be as a toy. And then I saw the sticker shock, and it was almost $700. But that price tag and everything that's been going on in the toy industry and with goods and services around the world over the last 2 years, toy prices keep going up. Companies like Hasbro and Mattel keep raising their prices. Obviously, the niche Japanese robot market is no different, and they were already expensive. So when I saw that price, it was at the extreme end of what I would comfortably put down. Like, it was an uncomfortable amount of money to put down. If what they were offering had been in the $450 range, we'd be having a different discussion. Yeah, it would have been a bigger chunk of change to put down, and that's still nothing to shake a stick at, but I would have at least been a little bit more relaxed about it. But at $700+ shipped, this was not, even in my mind, an easy buy. And I told myself, I said, this is going to have to be perfect, meaning even if it's not. Because at this point, this is the last Voltron, the last die-cast combining Beast King Golion that I will probably own new. Because if there's another one that comes out in the future, it will be so far beyond the reach of any paycheck to get. For most people, we might as well just disqualify it. I meant what I said in the title. Let this be my last Lionbot, for better or worse. Firstly, let's talk about what you get for that almost $700. You get a brand new die-cast and plastic Voltron with all sorts of new design features. Nothing seems to be left to chance here. And you get a 5+ pound robot when all is said and done. Now, comparatively, the other robots in the die-cast range, as far as the milestone ones are concerned, I did not own, nor do I have the Trendmasters reissue of the Matchbox or anything like that. But as far as the Popey Matchbox Bandai one of the past, and then the Toynami Masterpiece diecast, and then the Bandai Soul of Chogokin goes, you're looking at a slowly upward trajectory for the weight. The lightest one was the Matchbox one, then the Toynami one was a little heavier. The Bandai one, even though it was shorter, it had a lot more die-cast in it, and then you get this 5+ pound Blitzway one. True to the marketing, this thing is tall. It is 15 inches tall, not including the wings. And this guy towers over the other milestone die-cast Voltrons. He is a massive, massive Chogokin. It's nice and heavy, and the ratchet joints are part of not an internal structure, but they are made of die-cast metal. So what you're getting is you're getting very solid die-cast ratchet joints. Some of the joints are so tight that you get nervous even trying to start clicking them to get them to move. You're afraid you'll strip the gear systems in there, until you realize the gear systems are metal. And he is a highly articulated Voltron. He equals, if not rivals, what the Soul of Chogokin Voltron can do. He can strike all the classic Voltron poses, he can dance, and he can pull the not in the face move when attacked by some other toy. As far as his weapons go, I'm not going to get into that in great detail. That's been discussed ad nauseum on other YouTube channels. What I will say is it was a stroke of brilliance to work the weapons locker into the base of the display stand. I think that's genius, and everything that came with the Soul of Chogokin ends up being scaled up and included here with the Blitzway Voltron. Every lion blade, every lion weapon, even Voltron's weapons, they're all here. The only weapons that don't fit in the storage locker are his sword and his cutter, which understandably are too large to get into the base of this display stand, but they are included as well. The cutter is extremely thin plastic to give it that razor edge appearance, so be very careful with it when you're working with it. As far as Voltron's articulation goes as the robot, there are a few trouble spots. One is his drop hip motion. Now, it's nice that they included a drop hip feature so that he can get his legs up higher if you want to pose him, say, kneeling or something like that. However, because the ratchets for the hips themselves are independent from the drop hip armature, it means that sometimes the drop hip ends up turning when you're wanting to turn the hips. And so you're constantly fighting back and forth with the position of the drop hip versus the position of the hip itself. And that gets back to the tolerances for all the ratchet joints being very tight, which by and large is a good thing. It means this thing is very well engineered. But when it comes to the drop hip versus the hip joint relationship, it can be a headache when you're trying to get each one into a specific position because they work against one another. However, I will say that this Voltron from Blitzway has the best ankle positioning I've seen in any Voltron ever made. This Voltron can take the most dynamic poses with beautiful weight distribution, and those feet will still be flat on the surface of the table or the shelf that you put him on. It truly is remarkable, and I was very impressed by that. Another area of this Voltron where they tried to push the envelope, and you can tell they really wanted to deliver something special that ends up falling a little short, are the LED eyes. Now, every single lion and the main robot face have light-up eyes. These are achieved by very small watch batteries and other devices that are then hooked into LEDs. So for example, the black lion has 3 small watch batteries that lead to a switch on his Adam's apple, essentially. It looks okay when they're lit up. However, knowing that those batteries need to be replaced at some point in the future, and that they'll just sit there for the most part not being used when on display, it always makes me wonder what the purpose of light-up eyes for a Voltron really is. I wasn't impressed with the feature on the 30th anniversary Toynami, and I'm not really impressed with it here. Not because it doesn't work, but just because it's an unnecessary headache. And that headache comes into play when you look at the rest of the lions and their LED setups. The blue and yellow lion have larger watch batteries in the upper palate of their mouth. Unfortunately, in the instructions, they don't warn you that the plastic tabs that are sitting between the watch battery and the connectors, which normally on other toys are simple to pull out, if you try to pull those out, the tolerances are so tight, I actually ended up dislodging the entire battery compartment from the roof of my yellow lion's mouth. Fortunately, there was no damage to the wires, and I was able to reseat it, and I'll put some adhesive in there at some point to make it stay, but it's staying just fine on its own right now, so leave well enough alone. As far as the green and red lions light-up eyes are concerned, I'm not going to demo that for you, because the instructions to get those LEDs and tiny batteries in the back of their heads, it's so intricate, I don't even want to attempt it. And it's not because I'm afraid I'll break it, it's because they come on these blister cards. You get the bulb and you get the battery on this kind of blister pack together. They're batteries like I've never seen before. And if I open those up and then put them in the backs of the heads to see the light-up eyes, well, guess how you turn them off? The instruction sheet says it's recommended that you take the batteries back out of the head when the lights are not in use. So once I do that, what am I going to do? Take these very, very tiny batteries and try and put them in some Ziploc bag? I might as well just leave them on the blister pack and keep them in the box with everything else, since they're not going to be used 99% of the time anyway. It would be a curio, a head-scratching, headache-inducing curio to get those in there. And then what? I look at it, I take a picture, I take them back out, They even gave special tools in the box for these processes. Now, that's very responsible of them to do. I think that's wonderful that Blitzway did that. However, it just indicates how much of a process it is to get those bulbs in and out. And I really don't care enough to put them in there. I'd rather leave them on the blister card where I know they won't get lost and just keep them with the box. Now, despite how big and heavy this Voltron is, disassembly of him into the 5 lions is surprisingly easy, and it works just like it says in the instructions. Everything really does work as advertised, and that was a treat, because the Bandai Sola Chogokin one, for example, while it didn't have any trouble spots as far as things that might break, the tails of the red and green lions loved to pop off in the shoulders of the black lion, and then you'd have to fish them out and then stick them back on the ball joints. Here, they have dedicated tails for the red and green lions, but they also have dedicated shoulder connector points that flip out. So when the tail is in the same compartment, the shoulder pin is out, and then vice versa. When the tail is out, the shoulder pin flips in. There is a special tool to get that shoulder pin back out because, again, the tolerances for these ratchet joints are insane. And so they had to provide a leveraging tool to be able to get those things into a position where you could get your fingers around them and then reset them. They also include a small plastic screwdriver and pin type tool. It doesn't get explicitly discussed in the instructions that I saw, but it is going to be your friend for every single part of this transformation that requires a fingernail or some kind of wedge, because it's specifically designed to be able to pop some of these panels and tabs out without dinging the plastic parts, say on the chest piece when you're trying to separate the shoulder red tabs from the main center chevron, or when you're trying to lift up those tiny mouth cannons inside the lower jaws of the red and green lions. This thing becomes invaluable. So kudos to Blitzway for providing these tools. The question is, will everybody be smart enough to use them? One of the other features that Blitzway advertised for this Voltron that looked like it was going to be a game changer was finally giving us concealment panels for the legs of the limb lions so that it would look closer to the way it did animated when it turned into the full robot. Traditionally, Voltron and Golion toys have to have all of those legs tucked up and visible, even though in the animation, that's never the case. So when I saw these doors, I thought, oh wow, that's really going to be a game changer. They work, and they work as advertised, but after fiddling with these lions for a while, I start to wonder if the juice was worth the squeeze on this design feature. The problem I have with these concealment panels is mainly procedural. They have very tight tolerances, and they're very exacting, and getting them around the shoulders of every leg, or the hips of some legs, the shoulders of other legs, becomes a fiddly process because you've got to get those double hinged panels tucked properly and then clipped in, or get them pulled out and around. And with some of them, they don't quite sit flush to cover the legs. Like they cover them, but the little tabs don't snap in flush on some legs, and so they kind of want to pop out again. And while they are made of very nice, thick plastic, they're not flimsy or anything like that, it is an extra step in the process, and it can take a long time and give you fits when you're trying to get them around those shoulders and hips. Once they're in lion form, you immediately see how hefty and nicely engineered these lions are. Blitzway has done an incredible job with these lions. They're nice and hefty with the die-cast parts, and the mix-in of the plastic parts doesn't offend. Each lion has amazing articulation because the shoulders and hips of each lion's leg pop out from the sides of each lion's body to give it extra pivot points. They even have ankle rockers. Everything works a treat as far as the legs are concerned. Ratchets where they need them, rockers where they need them. The claws are actually even a little sharp. They snagged on my tablecloth here. It's really impressive to see the lions in lion form. One of the things that did surprise me about the Blitzway Voltron lions, despite how well engineered and well thought out they are, is the fact that even though this Blitzway Voltron appeared to be very comprehensive, it left off features that even the Soul of Chogokin lions left off, which means that only the original Popey Matchbox has these features. Namely, the opening ears of the yellow lion to reveal the cannons. The blue lion also doesn't have its head cannon that kind of lifts up from its ear crown thing. That's not there either. And again, the majority of Voltron toys over the last 35, 40 years don't have those features. So it's not something where I look and say, you're the first people to miss this, or wow, what a huge miss. But in the case of this $700 Voltron, I would have thought that Blitzway would have gone back and attempted to do those features again, because they haven't been done since the original Popey. I will admit I was also a little disappointed that Yellow and Blue Lion don't seem to have an ability to lower their heads very well. Their heads come up into the foot position just fine, and then when they go back into lion mode, they're kind of locked in parallel with the body. They don't really get to go down any further. And that was a little bit of a head scratcher for me. It would have been nice to allow those lions to hunker down a little bit more with their heads like a cat does. But, you know, there are limitations to the engineering of an animated character turned into a set of toys, and I get that. Now, while the Soul of Chogokin advertised this first with the idea that these lions can sit like cats, it was a little bit of a compromise. And the Blitzway Voltron also advertised that you can get these lions to sit like cats, and it's a lot closer to the way cats actually sit. But with the Black Lion, you have to cheat to simulate the look of a cat sitting. To get him low enough in the back, you have to have him resting on his knees. I am amused by the fact that Soul of Chogokin and now Blitzway have decided to start making the lions sort of snouts, jowls, whatever you want to call them, their mouth areas, their whisker areas, silver metallic rather than white. I do kind of miss the white painted parts to make it look a little more animation accurate. And the Blitzway Voltron continues the tradition of mysteriously not giving Green Lion his sort of red collar, which I would like to see at some point on one of these Voltrons. Another one of the new selling points of this Blitzway Voltron was cockpits with the pilots inside to scale. And they don't disappoint in that regard. There are little doors that open up on the backs of the lions so you can look inside and see the pilots. Now, my Green Lion, the door is loosey-goosey. So if the Green Lion is picked up or turned, that door just keeps sliding back and forth. Fortunately, that door is underneath Green Lion's main weapon on his back, so as long as that's closed, you don't see the door opening and closing, but you can hear it all the time. So it must just be a manufacturing variance on my Green Lion, which is frustrating, but not a fatal error. They also give you these standing pilots as well, and they are just as tiny. And unfortunately on mine, the plastic bubble tray that they're protected in the box seems to have compressed them on their stands to the point that even though they have no articulation, they all now lean back on their stands real bad. So I'm probably going to have to try some gentle persuasion with a heat gun to get these pilots to stand up straight again. I am also disappointed that there is no Sven, aka Shirogane, in this Blitzway Voltron as a sixth figure, because that would have been nice to have him as an option in place of Princess Allura. But I understand that they're doing sort of the quintessential Voltron crew. That's fine. The pilots that are seated inside the lions are not removable, at least as far as I can tell. And you have the little standing ones that you can put on their heads like in the end credits or display them on the display stand. It's a nice addition. They're not perfect, but at least they're included. And that is an extra that Blitzway didn't have to give us, but in doing so, it's quite nice. And I think once I get them worked with a little bit and figure out how I want to display everything, I think they'll look pretty cool. The lions really are stellar in this Blitzway Voltron set. I argue they are probably the most impressive renditions of the lions I've seen in any Voltron Golion toy. Blitzway has done that good of a job with these lions. I think they knew it. I think they knew what a good job they did because as part of the display stand, they advertised that the display stand could be configured to have the flight contrails of the lions so that you could display them like this, so that you could display them flying up like they did in the show. Because if there's one thing that's more iconic than the Voltron robot itself, it's Voltron's combining sequence. And that always begins with the lions flying up with the multicolored contrails. The fact that they worked that into a display stand option, because you can flip these acrylic arms and make them sort of straight up like Stonehenge in the back and have the main robot standing in front of all the colors, which is cool. But to then have them flip around and angle to be able to put all the lions there with their colored contrails coming out behind them is I mean, that's a showstopper. This right here is a show-stopping configuration that nobody else has ever offered right out of the box for Voltron. This is really impressive. And as a Beast King Golion fan of the original Japanese anime, this right here for me, when I finally saw this together like this, made the reticence of the almost $700 price tag go away. Because I thought to myself, well, you know what? Having fiddled with these out of the boxes, having some frustrations with the LEDs, really unsure about those drop hips and the ratcheting joints there, although everything's, like I said, very tightly toleranced, and there's been nothing loosey-goosey about any of the joints on this Voltron as the robot or as the Lions. It's really, really nice. If this is truly the last affordable Golion Voltron set, the last Lionbot I'll ever have, this right here was worth all of it. I want to leave this just like this. The Blitzway Voltron combined robot is stellar. Great weight distribution, great posing, beautiful sword and shield. He looks great. He really does. He's got the swappable faces, although even with Solo Chogokin, I didn't understand why anybody would want like an open mouth Voltron face. I know he did it in the show, but it's never something that's appealed to me. But they included it on this one as well. But even with all that and all the lion weapons and stuff like that, that's all nice. That's all great. This right here, to me, was always Voltron. All the lions. I loved the lions. That was my thing. And while I loved them coming together and playing in the floor, putting them together and all that stuff, having them as the lions was arguably for me even more fun. Because it was like having 5 fighter planes. And here they are. And they're flying. And it looks awesome. So my plan for this, after having seen how well this came together, Blitzway, you guys did an amazing job on this. This right here is choice. I've decided that when I finally do get this displayed, I'm going to have an acrylic riser behind this that will have the Soul of Chogokin robot on it. Because as far as modern Voltrons go, the lions just look choice. And the Soul of Chogokin is nice and compact enough that it can stand, maybe even on its display, stand behind and above this, so that I can have a really nice representation of the main robot, standing above all the lions flying. That's probably what I'm going to do. Because with that price tag, you can't have 2 of these unless you just have money to burn. So I wasn't about to do that. But I don't regret. The only thing I regret about this is the timing. I don't regret owning it, and I don't regret the money I spent to get it. But I do regret the fact that if it had come out 2 years prior, it might have been significantly less expensive. But that's the way things are shaking out in the toy industry these days. So for what they had to do in the circumstances they had to do it after it was announced, I think it's come out stellar. And I'm really glad that I jumped in on it. I really am. As a diehard, long-time Voltron fan, I'm glad that I did this one. This one has enough permanence built into it that there are no regrets on that score. I'm really, really proud to have this one. So let this be my last Lionbot.